a little girl wrote to Santa at the corner office. What happened next left her family and the CEO in tears. Emma was a little girl with a heart bigger than anyone her age. She was 7 years old, full of energy, and always had a smile that could light up the dullest room. But behind her sparkling eyes, there was a quiet sadness that she tried not to show. Life had not been easy for Emma. Her father had passed away a few years ago in a car accident, and since then, it had been just her and her mother, living in a small, crowded apartment in the city. Her mother, Claire, worked long hours at a diner to make sure they had enough food and to keep the lights on. Money was tight, and Emma knew it. She often overheard her mother talking on the phone late at night, trying to figure out how to pay for rent or buy groceries. Emma hated seeing her mother stressed and tired, and she secretly wished there was a way to make everything better, even though things were hard at home. Emma had never lost her love for Christmas. To her, Christmas was more than gifts and decorations. It was about hope, love, and little moments that made life feel magical. Every year, she would help her mother put up a small Christmas tree in their living room, using old ornaments that had belonged to her father. She would string lights carefully, making sure each one was just right. She would make paper snowflakes to hang on the windows. Despite the challenges, Emma always found a way to make the holidays special. She believed in magic, in Santa, and in the idea that good things could happen even when life seemed unfair. One cold December day, Emma's teacher at school told the class about a special program called Santa at the corner office. It was run by a local company that encouraged children to write letters as if they were writing to Santa. But instead of sending them to the North Pole, the letters went directly to the company's CEO. The CEO would read the letters and sometimes respond, either with gifts or by helping the children in ways that could really make a difference in their lives. Emma's ears perked up when she heard about it. She had never heard of anything like this before. She ran home after school, her mind buzzing with excitement and ideas. She wanted to write a letter, but she didn't want to ask for toys or fancy gadgets like some of the other kids might. She wanted her letter to mean something more. That evening, after helping her mother set the table for dinner, Emma sat at their small kitchen table with a sheet of paper and her favorite red pencil. She thought carefully about what to write. She wanted to be honest, but she also wanted to show kindness and gratitude. Emma knew that Santa War, the CEO, would probably get hundreds of letters, many asking for expensive things, but she decided that wouldn't matter. She wrote about her life, about her mother's hard work, and about the little joys that kept them going. She described how much she loved helping her mother in the kitchen, even when they were tired, and how she looked forward to small treats like a cup of hot cocoa or a warm blanket on a cold night. Emma also included a special wish. Instead of asking for toys, she wished for her mother to feel happy and safe. She wanted her mother to have peace, even just for a little while. And she wished for small comforts, a warm coat, extra food, and maybe even a chance to go out for a movie or a simple day of fun that didn't cost too much. Emma's words were simple, but filled with love. She didn't hide the difficulties they faced, but she didn't complain either. She wanted whoever read her letter to understand that a little kindness could go a long way in making someone's life brighter. After finishing the letter, Emma folded it carefully and put it in an envelope. She wrote Santa at the corner office on the front in her neatest handwriting. She felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. She didn't know if anyone would respond, but she hoped that someone, anyone, would read her letter and feel the sincerity behind her words. With her letter clutched tightly in her hands, she walked to the nearby office building where the program was being run. The winter air was chilly, and her little nose was red from the cold, but she didn't mind. She felt a sense of purpose with every step. When she reached the office, she handed the envelope to the receptionist, who smiled kindly at her and told her the letter would reach Santa. Emma nodded, her heart pounding. She imagined someone in a big office opening the envelope and reading her words. She pictured that person understanding her wish, feeling empathy for her and her mother, and maybe even deciding to help. After dropping the letter, Emma skipped home, feeling lighter than she had in days. She went to bed that night dreaming not of toys, but of hope. She didn't know it yet, but this small letter would soon change everything in her life. Over the next few days, Emma continued her normal routine, going to school, helping her mother, and spreading cheer in small ways. But she couldn't stop thinking about the letter. She wondered if anyone would read it, if anyone would care about what she had written. She imagined the CEO reading her words, pausing in his busy life to understand the little girl who cared more about her mother's happiness than her own. This thought gave her comfort. For Emma, hope was as important as any gift. She learned that even in hard times, reaching out with honesty and love could plant seeds of change. By writing that letter, Emma had unknowingly opened the door to something much bigger than herself. It wasn't just about the wish she made. It was about showing courage, expressing love, and believing that one person's act of kindness could make a difference. The letter was small, folded in a simple envelope, but it carried a message that went beyond words. It was a reminder that even the smallest voices could be heard, and even the humblest wishes could touch the hearts of Distotus. People far beyond their reach. Emma didn't realize that her letter was about to travel through the hands of someone who had also experienced loss and hardship, someone who could understand her in ways few others could. She only knew that she had done her part, that she had shared her heart, and that was enough for her. That night, as she drifted off to sleep, she dreamed of a world where kindness mattered more than wealth, and where a little girl's hope could reach the heart of someone who could change her life forever. The letter that Emma had carefully written made its way to the office of the local company, where it landed on the desk of the CEO, Mr. Jonathan Reed. Jonathan was a man known for his success in business. He ran a large company with hundreds of employees and was always busy with meetings, reports, and endless phone calls. Most people saw him as distant, serious, and sometimes intimidating. But Jonathan was not just a businessman. He was a widower who had experienced deep loss in his own life. Years ago, he had lost his wife unexpectedly, and since then, had thrown himself into work to manage the company and care for his daughter. He rarely allowed himself to feel sadness or personal attachment outside of his family, because the pressures of life demanded constant attention. The Santa at the Corner Office program was something Jonathan had agreed to support, mostly as a goodwill gesture and a way to encourage his employees. He didn't expect it to affect him personally. Every year, hundreds of letters from children came in, many asking for toys, gadgets, or extravagant gifts. Usually, he skimmed through them quickly, approving a team to handle most of the responses. But this year, something was different. When he opened Emma's envelope, the first thing he noticed was the neat handwriting. It was unusual for a 7-year-old to write so clearly and thoughtfully. But it wasn't the handwriting that captured him, it was the content of the letter. As he began reading, he was struck by the honesty, warmth, and maturity in her words. Emma didn't ask for toys, electronics, or expensive gifts. She didn't ask for things most children would dream of. Instead, she wrote about her mother, about how hard life had been since her father passed away, about her wish for her mother's happiness and small comforts that could make their life easier. She wrote about simple joys, like having enough food, a warm coat in winter, and little moments that brought peace and comfort. Jonathan paused as he read. Something about the letter made him stop in the middle of his day. He leaned back in his chair and thought about his own daughter and the memories of the wife he had lost. He remembered the nights when he would sit by her side, comforting her, trying to keep life normal after tragedy. He thought about how he had wished, at times, that someone would understand the challenges of raising a child alone, just as Emma's mother must be experiencing. There was a depth in Emma's words that was rare, a combination of love, hope, and courage that spoke across the page and straight to his heart. For the first time in years, Jonathan felt a personal connection to a letter in this program. Most letters had been requests for toys or gifts, but Emma's letter was different. It was not selfish. It was full of love and thoughtfulness for another person. It was a reminder of what really mattered in life, beyond money, business, and titles. It reminded him of the moments he cherished with his own daughter, the moments he almost let slip away in the rush of his daily life. He realized that in all his success, he had forgotten the simple power of empathy and human connection. Jonathan read the letter multiple times, each time feeling a mix of emotion, sadness for the struggles Emma and her mother faced. admiration for the little girl's courage, and a deep urge to help in a meaningful way. He thought about how difficult it must have been for a child to write so honestly about her life, to express her love for her mother without expecting material things in return. Emma had reached out in the purest form of hope, and Jonathan felt a responsibility to respond not just with gifts, but with real care. He set the letter down and leaned his head in his hands, thinking, how could he make a difference? Could he simply send a gift and call it done? Something inside him said no. Emma's words deserved more than a small gesture. They deserved attention, compassion, and acknowledgement. He realized that this letter had touched something in him that he had long buried: his own humanity, his own empathy, and his own understanding of loss and love. Jonathan made a decision. He would not simply respond from a distance. He wanted to see the girl behind the letter. He wanted to meet her and her mother, to understand them, and to help in a way that could truly make a difference in their lives. It was unusual for a CEO to take such a personal step, but Jonathan knew this was the right thing to do. He instructed his assistant to prepare a plan. They would arrange a visit to Emma's home, carefully and respectfully, without revealing too much in advance, so that the moment could be a surprise. As he prepared for the visit, Jonathan couldn't help think about how one small letter had managed to break through the walls he had built around his heart. A 7-year-old girl, unaware of the impact she would have, had reminded him of the importance of listening, caring, and connecting. He reflected on the lessons he had learned from his own loss, and how even after years of trying to focus only on work, he still craved moments of genuine human connection. Emma's letter had awakened that part of him. Over the next few days, Jonathan couldn't focus entirely on his usual work. He thought about what he would say to Emma, how he could help without making her feel uncomfortable or embarrassed. He planned small gifts, yes, but he also considered the emotional support that would mean the most. He wanted her mother to feel seen, to feel that their struggles mattered, and that kindness could come unexpectedly. Jonathan knew that the visit had to be authentic. It could not feel like a staged corporate act. Emma's honesty demanded honesty in return. When the day of the visit arrived, Jonathan felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He was a man used to making important business decisions, negotiating large deals, and managing a company. But meeting a little girl in her own home, responding to her heartfelt words, felt far more significant. He understood that this meeting was not about appearances or corporate image, it was about empathy, humanity, and the simple act of making someone's life better because they deserved it. In that moment, as he walked toward the car that would take him to Emma's home, Jonathan felt a strange kind of anticipation. A small letter, written with love and hope, had changed the course of his day and, perhaps even his life. It reminded him that no matter how successful someone might be in the world, real fulfillment comes from connecting with others, from offering kindness, and from responding to the courage and honesty of those who trust us with their hearts. Jonathan arrived at Emma's building with a sense of purpose. The letter had brought him face to face with an opportunity not only to help, but to witness the power of innocence, love, and hope firsthand. He knew that when Emma opened the door, she would be seeing more than just a visitor. She would see someone who had listened, understood, and wanted to make a meaningful difference in her life. And for Jonathan, that moment would be a reminder of what truly mattered in life: connection, compassion, and the incredible impact that a single, honest letter could have. Jonathan Reed, the CEO, had made up his mind. Emma's letter had touched him deeply, and he knew that a simple gift sent through the mail would not be enough. He wanted to do something meaningful, something that would show both Emma and her mother that their struggles mattered, and that someone out there genuinely cared about their happiness. The next morning, he sat in his office, thinking carefully about how to approach the situation. He didn't want to overwhelm them, and he didn't want the visit to feel staged or artificial. He wanted it to feel personal, sincere, and warm, something Emma and her mother would remember for the rest of their lives. Jonathan called his assistant and spoke quietly, almost as if making a secret plan. He explained that he wanted to visit the little girl personally, but he emphasized that it had to be a surprise. The idea of stepping into a child's home, unannounced yet kindly, was unusual for someone in his position, but he felt it was the only way to show genuine care. His assistant was slightly nervous but understood the importance of the task. Together, they arranged a small bag of items for the family. It extravagant but practical. There were warm winter clothes, a few groceries, a cozy blanket, and small toys for Emma. Not because she had asked for them, but to bring joy and comfort. Most importantly, they included a personal note from Jonathan, written in simple, heartfelt language, explaining that he had been moved by her letter and wanted to support them in any way he could. Meanwhile, Emma and her mother, Claire, were going about their usual routines. Claire had been working long hours at the diner, and Emma had been helping with household chores, finishing her homework, and trying to keep the small apartment cheerful despite the cold and the struggles they faced. Emma had almost forgotten about the letter she had dropped off at the office. She had written it with hope in her heart, but she never truly expected anyone to respond. Yet she secretly wished for a little magic. A little reminder that good things could happen even in hard times. Jonathan left the office in the late afternoon, carefully dressed in a simple coat to avoid appearing overly formal or intimidating. He wanted to look approachable, someone who could connect with Emma on her level. As he drove through the city streets, he reflected on the power of that single letter. A small piece of paper had bridged the gap between two very different worlds, the busy, high-powered life of a CEO and the modest, struggling life of a single mother and her daughter. He thought about the courage it must have taken for a 7-year-old girl to reach out to a stranger, to trust that someone would care enough to listen. He felt a sense of admiration and responsibility, knowing that his actions now would carry real meaning. When he arrived at the apartment building, Jonathan paused outside for a moment. The cold air bit at his cheeks, but he felt a warmth in his chest that had been missing for years. He took a deep breath, reminding himself that this was about empathy, not business. He rang the buzzer and waited. Inside the apartment, Claire had just returned from a long shift, tired and cold. Emma, hearing the doorbell, ran to open it, expecting maybe a neighbor or a delivery. When the door opened, there was a man standing there, smiling gently, holding a bag in his hands. "Hello?" he said softly. "I'm Santa from the corner office. May I come in?" Emma's eyes widened. She stared at him, unsure if she was dreaming or awake. She had imagined someone responding to her letter, but she had never imagined that it would be the CEO himself, standing at her doorstep. Her heart raced, and she felt a mix of excitement, disbelief, and joy. Claire, too, was stunned. She couldn't believe her eyes. A man who clearly had a busy life and important responsibilities was here. At her small apartment, personally showing care for her family. There were no cameras, no reporters, no fanfares. Just a sincere visit from someone who had read a simple letter and been moved to act. Jonathan stepped inside, taking in the modest apartment with respectful curiosity. He knelt down slightly to Emma's level and spoke in a gentle voice, asking her about her school, her favorite books, and the things she liked to do. He listened intently as Emma shyly explained what she enjoyed, from drawing pictures to helping her mother in the kitchen. He nodded, smiled, and responded in ways that made her feel truly seen and heard. It was a conversation built on kindness, empathy, and genuine interest. Emma's mother watched quietly, touched by the way Jonathan treated her daughter with respect and care. After the initial introductions, Jonathan gave them the bag of items he had brought. It contained warm jackets, gloves, and hats for the coming winter. There were groceries for a few weeks, a cozy blanket, and small toys that Emma could enjoy. But it wasn't just the material gifts that mattered. It was the thought behind them. He had carefully chosen items that would meet their practical needs, while also adding moments of joy to their everyday lives. He also handed Claire the personal note he had written, expressing how much Emma's letter had touched him and offering guidance and support to help her and Emma thrive. The room was filled with a mixture of surprise, gratitude, and awe. Emma hugged the gifts tightly, unable to believe the kindness of the man before her. Her mother's eyes welled up with tears as she read the note, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness and care shown to them. The visit was more than a simple act of charity, it was a moment of human connection. a validation of their struggles, and a reminder that even in difficult times, kindness and empathy could reach them in unexpected ways. Jonathan stayed for a while, chatting with them about everyday things, sharing stories about his own daughter and listening to theirs. He didn't want to overstay his welcome, but he wanted the family to feel comfortable and valued. He encouraged Claire to continue pursuing her goals and reassured Emma that her honesty and compassion had made a difference. The visit was informal, yet deeply meaningful, a genuine exchange of care and understanding. As he prepared to leave, Jonathan felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He realized that this simple act of showing up had done more than help Emma and her mother materialize, had created a memory, a story of hope and kindness that they would carry for the rest of their lives. For Emma, it was the magic of Christmas come to life, a living example that even one letter could change everything. For Jonathan, it was a reminder that life's greatest rewards often come from giving. Listening and connecting with others, driving away, he thought about the ripple effect this small visit could create, not just for Emma and Claire, but for everyone who might hear about their story. He knew that moments like this reminded people of the importance of kindness, compassion, and human connection. And he felt grateful that he had the opportunity to make a real difference. The letter had started as a simple plea from a little girl and had grown into something extraordinary, bridging the gap between two worlds and showing the true power of empathy. When Jonathan stepped into Emma and her mother's small apartment, the air felt warmer somehow, despite the winter chill outside. He carried himself carefully, wanting to make sure the moment felt natural, personal, and comforting. For him, this wasn't a business meeting, a public relations opportunity, or a charity event. It was something far more meaningful. It was a chance to show that human connection could transcend status, money, and circumstance. Emma, holding the door slightly ajar, stared at the man in awe. Her eyes widened as she took in the neatly dressed stranger who carried a bag of gifts but wore a gentle smile that immediately made her feel safe. Jonathan knelt slightly to be at Emma's level. "Hello, Emma," he said softly. "I'm Santa from the corner office. Can I come in?" There was a pause. Emma blinked, unsure if she was dreaming or if this was real. She had imagined someone reading her letter, maybe even sending a small gift, but she had never pictured the CEO himself standing at her doorstep. Her small hand slowly reached for the edge of the bag he held, and a shy smile began to form. Her mother, Claire, stood behind her, stunned. She was tired from her shift, and her heart was racing. She had never expected that someone would take her daughter's words so seriously, that anyone in the world could care enough to personally come to their home. Jonathan carefully stepped inside. Closing the door behind him, he looked around, taking in the modest apartment with respect and understanding. There were signs of love everywhere, the small Christmas tree in the corner with paper ornaments, hand-drawn pictures on the wall, and a cozy blanket draped over the couch. He could see that Emma and her mother had done their best to create warmth and beauty despite limited means. Jonathan felt a deep admiration for them and a strong desire to show that their effort and love had been noticed. He knelt and smiled at Emma. "I read your letter," he said gently. "It was very brave and kind. You wrote about your mom and the things that matter most in life. I wanted to come and meet you and see how I can help." Emma's eyes grew even wider, and her small lips trembled as she whispered, "You really read it?" Jonathan nodded. "I did, and it touched my heart." Her mother watched silently, feeling tears prick her eyes. She could see that this wasn't just a gesture, it was genuine care. Jonathan opened the bag he had brought and began to pull out the items one by one. There were warm jackets and gloves for the coming winter, cozy blankets, and a small basket of groceries. He handed Emma a few toys, not extravagant but chosen carefully to bring joy. The gifts were practical but thoughtful, and the way Jonathan presented them showed he had considered their needs with care. "These are for you," he said, handing her the blanket. "I hope they keep you warm and comfortable." Emma's eyes sparkled as she hugged the blanket tightly. Her mother's hand shook slightly as she accepted the groceries, feeling a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. But it wasn't just the gifts that made this moment special, it was the attention Jonathan gave them. He spoke with Emma, asking her about school, her favorite stories, and her hobbies. He listened patiently as she described how she helped her mother in the kitchen, how she loved drawing and reading, and how she always tried to make her mother smile. Jonathan laughed gently at her little jokes, nodded at her achievements, and encouraged her to keep being kind and thoughtful. He made her feel seen, important, and valued. It was more than a meeting, yet was a human connection, rare in a world that often overlooked small voices like Emma's. Claire, Emma's mother, felt tears roll down her cheeks. She had worked tirelessly to provide for her daughter, often going without so that Emma could have small comforts. She had worried about whether she was doing enough, whether she could give Emma the childhood she deserved. And here was a man, someone she had never met, someone with power, resources, and experience, who had come not to judge or lecture, but to listen, to care, and to help. She felt a wave of relief and gratitude. Realizing that her daughter's letter had reached someone who truly understood its meaning, Jonathan also handed Claire a personal note he had written. In it, he praised Emma's courage, offered words of encouragement, and shared his own experiences as a parent who had faced loss. He expressed hope for their future and assured them that he would continue to support them in small ways. The note was heartfelt, not corporate or impersonal, and it carried a message that would linger with them long after the visit ended. Claire held the note close to her chest, feeling the weight of the kindness and empathy behind it. For Emma, the experience was magical. She had written her letter with hope and love, never expecting this kind of response. She felt seen and understood in a way she had never experienced before. The gifts were wonderful, yes. It was the human attention, the way Jonathan had knelt to talk to her, listened to her stories, and treated her as important, that made her heart soar. She felt a sense of connection and joy that would stay with her forever. Jonathan stayed for a while, chatting casually with both Emma and her mother. He shared stories about his own daughter, about the challenges and joys of parenting, and listened attentively to theirs. He encouraged Emma to continue being thoughtful and kind, and he reassured Claire that her hard work was noticed and valued. It was a conversation built on trust, empathy, and authenticity, something that neither the CEO nor the family would forget. As the visit came to an end, Jonathan reflected on what had just happened. He realized that this encounter was more than a simple act of giving, it was a moment of transformation. He had brought warmth, comfort, and practical support, but he had also built a bridge between two lives that otherwise might never have intersected. Emma had shown him the power of honesty, kindness, and hope. While he had given her and her mother a reminder that they were not alone, the experience had enriched everyone involved, leaving a lasting impression that went far beyond material gifts. When Jonathan finally left, Emma hugged her mother tightly, whispering how amazing it had been to meet someone so kind. Claire held her daughter close, feeling a mixture of relief, happiness, and hope. They had been touched not just by the gifts, but by the recognition that their struggles mattered, that their lives were seen, and that compassion could reach them in unexpected ways. It was a Christmas miracle of a different kind, one that had been made real through a simple, heartfelt letter. Jonathan drove away with a sense of fulfillment he hadn't felt in years. He knew that this small act of visiting Emma and her mother had created memories, hope, and inspiration that would last a lifetime. For Emma, it was a story of magic and kindness she would tell again and again. For Jonathan, it was a reminder that true success is not measured by money or titles, but by the lives we touch, the hearts we reach, and the empathy we show in a world that often forgets the power of simple human connection. After Jonathan left Emma and her mother's apartment, a sense of wonder lingered in the small home. Emma could hardly stop talking about the visit. She kept hugging the blanket and toys he had given her, and her eyes sparkled as she retold every moment to her mother. For Claire, it was overwhelming. She had seen strangers come and go before, but this was different. This man, someone powerful, busy, and successful, had taken time out of his life to personally visit them. He hadn't come with cameras or publicity. He had come because he had genuinely cared. It was a kindness that was rare in the world, and it touched her deeply. That night, after putting Emma to bed, Claire sat quietly by the window, holding the note Jonathan had written. She read it over and over, feeling a mixture of gratitude, relief, and inspiration. The words reminded her that she was not alone, that her efforts as a mother mattered, and that small acts of courage and honesty could truly change lives. In the days that followed, Emma and her mother carried the joy and hope from that visit into every corner of their lives. For Emma, the experience had reinforced something she had always believed, that kindness mattered more than material things. She continued helping her mother, but now with an extra sparkle in her step. Knowing that someone out there had noticed her efforts and cared about her family, she talked about Jonathan with her friends at school, carefully describing the gentle, kind man who had come to see them, and how he had listened to her stories with interest. She didn't focus on the gifts. They were wonderful, yes, but she focused on the warmth, empathy, and understanding she had felt during that visit. Claire, too, found herself inspired by the encounter. It was more than a single act of generosity. It was proof that the world still had good people, that even in tough times, compassion could reach them unexpectedly. Motivated by this hope, she began exploring small opportunities that she had previously put aside, thinking she didn't have time or resources. She applied for a better position at work, started taking small steps to improve her skills, and even joined a local parent support group to meet other single mothers. Jonathan's visit had not just given them gifts, it had ignited a spark of possibility, a belief that they could pursue better opportunities for themselves and their future. For Jonathan, the visit had a lasting impact as well, turning to his busy life of meetings, strategy, and endless decisions. He found himself thinking more often about the power of small gestures, the significance of listening, and the importance of empathy. He realized that even someone as busy as he was could take time to make a meaningful difference in the lives of others. Emma's letter had reminded him that success in life isn't just measured by wealth, profits, or achievements. It's measured by the connections we make, the kindness we show, and the hearts we touch. He decided to continue the practice of personally responding to children's letters in the company program. It's not just as a formality, but as a genuine effort to reach out and create moments of hope for families like Emma's. The story of Emma and the CEO began to spread quietly at first, shared among employees and local neighbors. People were inspired by the fact that a small letter could lead to such a profound personal connection, bridging the gap between two very different worlds. The story highlighted the power of honesty, the courage of children, and the ripple effect that even one act of empathy could create. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about the truth that small gestures can have a life-changing impact. Soon, the story reached local media, not as a sensational headline, but as a heartwarming example of human goodness and the importance of paying attention to those who might otherwise go unnoticed. Emma's life didn't change overnight. She and her mother continued to face challenges as any family might. But the experience gave them hope, and hope is powerful. It changed the way they viewed their everyday struggles. Emma became more confident, more cheerful, and more determined to help her mother. She started setting small goals for herself at school, participating in activities she had previously shied away from, and sharing her joy with classmates. Claire noticed that her daughter's attitude had transformed. The little spark of magic from that visit gave both of them strength, helping them face their difficulties with courage and optimism. Jonathan, too, found himself changed in subtle but profound ways. He became more present with his own daughter, valuing time spent listening, playing, and connecting rather than focusing solely on work. The visit reminded him that empathy and personal attention were invaluable, not just in business, but in life. He began implementing initiatives within his company to encourage employees to engage personally with charitable programs, emphasizing that true impact comes from genuine involvement, not simply writing checks. Emma's letter had reminded him that even a small voice, when heard and acknowledged, can inspire change in ways no one can predict. Months passed, but the memory of that winter day remained vivid for all three of them. Jonathan continued to keep in touch, occasionally sending notes, small gifts, and words of encouragement. Emma and Claire cherished these gestures, not as mere charity, but as proof of ongoing care and attention. The connection had become something deeper than a one-time visit. It had become a relationship built on trust, kindness, and shared humanity. Emma learned an important lesson that would stay with her for life: courage. Honesty and a loving heart can reach people far beyond one's immediate world. The visit also left a lasting mark on the community. Other children who participated in the Santa at the Corner Office program felt inspired to write genuine letters, not just asking for gifts, but sharing their hopes, dreams, and stories. Employees in Jonathan's company became more involved in volunteer work, realizing that their efforts could create real impact. The story of Emma's letter and the CEO's visit became a living example of how simple acts of kindness can spread far and wide, influencing countless lives indirectly. Ultimately, what began as a single heartfelt letter became a story about the power of connection. Emma and her mother received warmth, support, and hope. Jonathan rediscovered the joy of personal empathy, and the broader community witnessed a moment of genuine human goodness that inspired them to care for others. That Christmas, a small letter written with love and courage not only brought joy to a little girl and her mother, but also reminded a busy CEO of the meaning of true human connection. It showed that even in a world that often seems rushed, uncaring, or distant, a little kindness, when given sincerely, can change lives forever. Emma never forgot that winter day when the CEO appeared at her doorstep. The experience shaped her understanding of the world, instilling a lifelong belief in the importance of empathy, courage, and hope. Claire, too, carried the memory with her, inspired to pursue opportunities and create a better life for her daughter. And Jonathan continued to lead his company successfully, but with a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that the real measure of success lies not in numbers or titles, but in the lives touched and the hearts reached. In the end, a simple act, a child writing a heartfelt letter, had created a chain reaction of kindness and hope. It reminded everyone involved that no matter how small we may feel, our actions and words can have extraordinary consequences. A little girl's wish, expressed with sincerity, had the power to transform the lives of people far beyond her imagination, proving that empathy, love, and courage are gifts that never lose their value. If you want, I can also help create a compelling hook line or viral headline for this story that could grab